Hello again, welcome back. Let's get more now on that rail disruption that affected commuters up and down the country this morning. Network Rail says the delays and cancellations were due to an issue with a radio system that drivers use to communicate with signallers. Although the problem has now been fixed, it's not the first time travel has been brought to a halt nationwide because of a single fault. Well, I'm joined now by Mohammed Yahya Patel, lead security engineer at Checkpoint Software Technologies. Great to have you on the programme. The fault on the trains today was down to this onboard communications system. What more do we know?
Yeah, I think we've heard from Network Rail around this onboard system and a specific card that was at fault here. I think it's we're looking at a problem here whereby a single card or system here that has caused massive disruption, and it's definitely a call here to action to think about what type of resiliency and backup do we have in place, whether we're talking about our infrastructure on rail, whether it's other critical national services that we need to be thinking about.
And clearly they did have a backup system in place, but it took a while for it to get up and running. And I suppose the ideal scenario is if your main system goes down, the next one should kick in immediately and there should be no break in service.
Exactly, and we find this is quite often in the conversations that we have here with UK organisations is around how prepared are you for any type of sort of incident. We focus largely on cyber, but we also talk about infrastructure to think about what happens in that scenario where your main system, your main security solution is affected. How quickly can you get back up and running, and have you enacted this type of plan before and looked at how quick you can get things back up and running?
Commuters this morning and many mornings will throw their hands up in the air and say it's another example of Britain's crumbling infrastructure. Is the UK's infrastructure crumbling? Is it really out of date?
I've been affected by some of these issues at railway stations as well, but I think if we're looking at the bigger picture here and looking at the infrastructure in the UK, we recently had the NCSC publish their annual review, and it talked about, how are we prepared? What do we need to do in order to get ahead of these threats and incidents? And I think we do need to be thinking more about the threats that are facing the national infrastructure that we have here. We've seen attacks against, the healthcare sector. We've seen stuff against our transport networks and energy sectors. So we really do need to be thinking about how we can combat some of these threats on a daily basis, largely focusing on improving, I guess, our hygiene, but it's our backup system, whether it's the people that we have in employment to kind of help combat the skills gap that we talk about as well. So I think, there's more to be done, and we're here on a daily basis talking with UK organisations about how they can improve specifically cybersecurity services, but other platforms as well.
Because it is very frustrating, isn't it? Like you've just talked about this tiny little bit of kit that was needed today that caused, chaos on the railways. A report came out very recently into the chaos at airports in 2023 when an air traffic control shutdown happened. And then it was because there was an engineer working from home who couldn't log into the system and had to drive into work. And yet thousands of planes were delayed and disrupted as a result. Often it seems that the problem is very simple, but the issue it causes is vast.
Yeah, I mean, today's society, we're heavily reliant on these digital platforms, and there's no getting away from it. We're going to advance further and further onto these digital platforms. So I think we do need to be thinking about the single point of resilience and problems that can happen and how to kind of mitigate these, whether it's a human error or a natural technical or system error that we need to kind of overcome and put measures in place to kind of mitigate against this.
Well, the government set up a British infrastructure task force, hasn't it? What would you like to see then at the top of the agenda? What's the number one thing that they need to tackle straight away?
I think we need to look at sort of the legacy systems and outdated platforms that we have out there. There's a lot of this in our critical infrastructure, and that can cause problems. Outdated systems, but also looking at the people that we have actually protecting some of these systems as well. So yeah, it's definitely the technology, but also I'd say the human and people's element that we need to be looking at to see what we can do there.
I have a feeling we might be speaking again in coming months about all of this. But for now, Mohammed Yahya Patel, lead security engineer at Checkpoint Software Technologies. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get to sport. Here's Jasper.